I never imagined that one sentence could divide a life so sharply into before and after. But that's exactly what happened the night my wife told me where she'd been. She said it in an offhand way, almost carelessly, as if she were talking about staying late for dinner with colleagues. We were in the kitchen, the low hum of the refrigerator filling the silence between us. She placed her purse on the counter, slipped off her heels, and exhaled like someone exhausted from a long day. Then she said, "I went to a swinger party. I slept with someone." For a second, I truly believed I'd heard her wrong. My mind scrambled to find a gentler interpretation, some joke or figure of speech that hadn't landed properly. I let out a small, uneasy laugh, expecting her to grin and tell me I was overreacting. She didn't. The room felt as if it shifted off balance. The chipped mug on the counter, the honeymoon photo stuck to the fridge, everything familiar suddenly felt strange. My chest tightened, not with anger at first, but with pure disbelief. This was the woman I had built habits with, made promises with, shared years with. We'd had our arguments, yes, but we always returned to the same understanding. We were partners. When? I asked. Even to my own ears, my voice sounded far away. Last night, she replied. I didn't expect it to go that far, but it did. 1,000 questions rushed forward. Who? Where? Why? But at the same time, I didn't want to hear any of the answers. They felt both necessary and unbearable. What mattered most was that something sacred to me had been crossed without warning, without agreement, without consideration. She tried to justify it. She said she'd been feeling restless, overlooked, curious about a world that offered excitement without consequences. A friend had invited her. It was only supposed to be observing, just conversation. She insisted it wasn't about replacing me, that her love for me hadn't changed. But as she continued, I realized something quietly crushing. She had already come to terms with what she'd done. The chaos existed entirely inside me. That night, I slept on the couch, staring at the ceiling until dawn. Every time I shut my eyes, memories forced their way in. Slow Sunday mornings, private jokes, the way she used to reach for my hand in crowded rooms. They felt like relics from a marriage that no longer existed. The next morning, she behaved almost as if nothing had happened. She asked if I wanted coffee. She mentioned errands we needed to run. That normalcy cut deeper than anger could have. It told me that while my world had fractured, hers had simply adjusted to fit a new reality. Instead of answering her, I went for a long drive. I passed places that once belonged to us, the park where we walked after dinner, the hardware store where we debated paint colors, the restaurant where I'd proposed. Mile after mile, one question became clearer, even though it frightened me. Could I live with this? I knew myself well enough to understand that trust, once broken like this, wouldn't quietly rebuild. I would replay that night in my mind every time she came home late, every time her phone lit up with a smile she didn't explain, every subtle shift in her tone. I would turn into someone suspicious, diminished, always waiting for the next betrayal. And I didn't want to become that person. When I returned home, she was sitting on the couch, knees drawn up, looking anxious for the first time since her confession. "I think we need to talk," she said. "We already have," I answered, sitting across from her. I felt older than I had just hours before. She reached for my hand, and I gently pulled it away, not out of anger, but out of necessity. The space between us felt essential, like a boundary I needed in order to breathe. "I'm filing for divorce," I told her. Her eyes widened, and her composure finally cracked. She cried, saying it had been a mistake, that it was only one night, that we could try counseling. She promised transparency, promised to change anything I asked. I listened, truly listened. But beneath her pleas, I could still hear the calm from earlier. The ease with which she had stepped over a line I had never agreed to move. I realized then that love isn't sustained by forgiveness alone. It rests on shared values, shared boundaries, shared respect. "I don't hate you," I said. "But I can't remain married to someone who makes decisions like that without me." The days that followed felt heavy and mechanical. Calls to attorneys, difficult conversations with family, boxes slowly filling with pieces of a life I once believed would last forever. Friends chose sides, some urging me to reconsider, others quietly supporting my resolve. Everyone seemed to have an opinion about what should be forgivable. At night, alone in the house, doubt crept in. I questioned whether I was being too inflexible, too proud. I wondered if marriages were meant to endure worse. But every time I imagined staying, I felt that tightness in my chest again, the sense that I'd be surrendering something fundamental. The day I signed the papers, I didn't feel triumph or relief. I felt steady, a calm that comes after a storm, when the damage is finally visible in daylight. She moved out shortly after. The house became quieter, emptier, but gradually it also felt lighter. I began sleeping through the night again. I started running in the mornings, cooking for myself, rediscovering who I was before my identity had fused so completely with another person's choices. I don't share this story because I believe divorce is always the solution. I share it because sometimes love doesn't end in shouting or cruelty. Sometimes it ends with a simple, irreversible clarity. The life you want and the life being offered to you are no longer the same. My wife went to a swinger party and slept with another man. I filed for divorce. And in doing so, I chose a future where I could meet my own reflection without resentment, even if that meant moving forward alone.